on the roster for the World Series. So I really think that was really pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that, and I just said, well, they said that says a lot for the individual, and whatever it is. What they got $50 million invested in him, so hopefully they find a way to get their money's worth out of that deal here. But yeah, man, I don't see how going to Kansas City is going to help the Orioles at all, because that place, just like you said, it doesn't play into what they do well. And of course, there's if they can stay alive and keep this thing going, you got the Chris Davis issue that could come into play at the end. I believe it's Game 6 that he would be eligible to return for there, but they got to get there, and I don't think they will. We talked about it yesterday. Duffy came out, and they're getting cocky now, and I would too if I had things rolling like that. He said this thing's not getting back. They're not getting this thing back to Baltimore, and I could see that living up to that too, because I think Kansas City, it's kind of like we talk about with the Brownies, man. It's one thing to improve and get better, and it's another, and then you're a good team, and like you make that progress, but then you reach that point where you believe it yourself, where you really buy into it, and that's where the Royals are now. I mean, there's not a moment in time where they believe they can't come back. I mean, we mentioned it yesterday. This is a team that was trailing by 4 runs with a handful of outs left to go against Oakland. I mean, what did they have, 12 outs left in their season or something like that? And maybe even less than that. And they come back, and as we know, the rest is history. So all my Indians team of destiny, I had the right division, just had the wrong team, because it was the team one spot past the Indians that clearly have destiny all over their side. And then go over to the other side. They've had some magical moments going on over there too, and you got a good matchup coming up too with Lackey and Hudson here. Where are you at on the Cards and the Giants?
Well, I think that series is a lot more even up, I think. The way those teams with their, the championship pedigrees that they have and the playoff experience they have, even the veteran pitching that they have, like you said tonight, with, Lackey and Hudson, I think those two teams really, really match up very well against each other. And it's hard, to pick a winner. But I think that, unfortunately for the Cardinals, I think the difference is going to be the injury last night to Yadier Molina.
Yeah,
I mean, he is really the straw that stirs the drink, not just from a defensive standpoint, handling the pitchers, but he's really come into his own as a hitter as well, and he's, done really great. And they're saying, well, maybe he can come back and maybe he can pinch hit. But I don't think so. I think he's really messed up. He couldn't even, after he hit that ball, he couldn't even run out of the batter's box. And, that takes a long time to heal.
I don't know if you had heard the latest update, but I did hear that he actually surprised the Cardinals a bit today, able to play catch and able to move a little bit better than he thought. Now, there's still talk of bringing him, obviously, off the bench and bringing him back slower, but there's a little bit of hope now that just maybe it's not as severe as it was feared, because like you said, that's a difference maker there, because that's such a key part of what you do. But, maybe a little bit of hope there. Mike Matheny was saying, he was glad to see him age. It was a significant improvement from where they expected him to be the next morning.
But still, that seems like an injury that you really got to go tread lightly with. And if I were them, think about bringing him off the bench. That's for at least the next couple of days. Just let him completely rest. See if you gain in possibly a series-saving situation. There's a chance that you might be able to have him back. If he's able to get back, they have to really try to put him in a protective bubble for at least the next. He is so important to that team, and it's good for them that they've got, they were smart enough to bring 2 other catchers. A.J. Krasinski, of course, who's caught Lackey before, and then Tony Cruz. So it's not like they don't have any catchers, but I think the rest of the guys are going to have to pick up for him, especially for the next couple of games. But that's really a big drawback for them. I know it's just one guy, but I think that puts the advantage in favor of the Giants.
Oh, it's not just one guy when you're talking about a guy like that, man. That's an MVP, man. So that could be that, and that really could be the difference there in the series. Right now, tied at 1, as it's in San Francisco. Like we said, Lackey and Hudson, that'll be a good one here. That's the afternoon game, 4:07 this afternoon. And then Baltimore and Kansas City will pick things up at 8:07 with that rain-delayed game from last night. I don't have a weather update. I don't know if you've seen anything. What is the weather looking like there for that one? Are they going to get that one in? I see there's some clouds but clear skies for the other game, obviously, out there on the West Coast. But how's things looking for the Royals and the O's?
I haven't really seen, actually. So I'm hopefully, as long as it's not a torrential downpour, hopefully they'll they'll wait it out and get it in there. Of course, Kansas City's used to playing late in extra innings and stuff, so I'm sure they wouldn't mind dodging a few raindrops when they're getting in this game, because schedule-wise, you need to play these next 3 in a row.
As I've got it here, I've just pulled up the latest. Right now, game time, 8:07. Temperatures expected to be in the 55 to 60 degree range with a light to moderate rain. So they are expecting some sprinkles, but perhaps, like you said, they may have to wait, whatever they have to do, because they don't have until September 22nd to make this one up. They need to get these games going and get it rolling. So the Royals 2 wins away from their first World Series since 1985. And you know what? I just keep finding these little signs of why things are meant to happen. They won it all then, too, and I think they're going to do the same thing here. They're just going to roll it straight through. I think of like a team like, was it Colorado several years back, where they got on that run at the end of the season and then just ran it and just kept going, and that's the way Kansas City feels to me. Like, they not only have, obviously they make some gutsy calls. The manager is known for that, good and bad. So they've got that. They've got that recklessness, and they've got the confidence now that they just can't be beat. And I think that they may just not look back. 2 weeks from now, we just be looking back going, and to think it all started when they were down 4 runs to Oakland, and then they just never looked back, because that's the way they feel to me. It's going to be up to Baltimore to try to stop that momentum. And tonight, pitching matchups. And here's another decent one. Guthrie and Chen, that should be a good matchup there from the starting pitchers.
That's right. Chen has actually had a pretty decent amount of success against the Royals. So, the Orioles have that going, of course, who's played for the Orioles before and the Indians.
And the Indians.
If Guthrie can just keep the ball in the park, if he can avoid, hanging the ball up in the strike zone and keep it in the park, his outfielders will catch it, because guys like Lorenzo Cain and them, they've been just flying all over the field, making one insane circus catch after another. And that's one of the reasons why they know someone's going to come through with the big play at the plate and out in the field.
And as we know, the Royals don't need Guthrie to give them 7, 8, 9 innings. I mean, hey, you give us a solid 5. All you to do is get us to the bullpen, hopefully with a lead, and that bullpen, one of the better ones in baseball. We know that they like to just go to work from there. So it's not like they need out of Guthrie either.
Right, that's the way it's been all year for them with, Radical as an 8th-inning pitcher, and he's got both wins so far. And then, Greg Holland, he gave up a run in the first game, but then, he was able to shut him down. And so, and fortunately for them, they got that right, so they can come right back and they can shut you down in the 8th and 9th with Davis and Holland if they have to. And so that's why the Orioles are going to have to hit the ball. It really looks like the Royals are going to win this. If it was a team maybe that had a little more playoff experience, I would say, they're not out of it. They can still come back. But, I think a team playoffs like the Orioles, for them to ask them to beat the Royals as hot as they are, to beat them 4 out of 5 times, I think that's a little too much to ask.
Absolutely. And, perhaps on another day, I'd feel better about Chen last week. Was it last week? Yeah, it was about a week ago. Against the Tigers. He didn't even make it out of 4 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, ended up with the no decision because not the best confidence builder to head into a crucial one. 2-1, a whole lot different than 3-0, as we know. So you've already got your backs against you. So that one's tonight, 8 o'clock. If they get it in, we'll see what happens with those. Let's shift our attention to the Indians, bring it back home here, of course. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you saw Tribe with the preliminary announcement about Tribe Fest. This year it's going to be January 24th and 25th at Progressive Field. That's always a good time. My son went last and they had some fun. I mean, there were just players everywhere and a lot of, one-on-ones and things like that. So, it's a pretty cool thing. And you know what? By that point, too, they'll be pretty significantly well along with the construction. So you'll probably get a little bit of a sneak peek view of some of the changes that are going on down there. Always a fun time. But I like that. I liked when the Indians added that. And they end up taking it all the way around anyway. They do the stops on the media tour through all the different towns around Ohio, and that's always a good thing there. But I like the way the Indians do this. They set it up very well where it's a lot of fun. I know my kids had a good time going to it.
And the timing is perfect. Of course, right in the dead of winter, it's the week before the Super Bowl. It could be a very depressing day with just looking at a bunch of snow. Just getting out there and just sort of getting around all those baseball players and fans and just thinking about baseball, because it's just going to be about 4 more weeks and then we'll be in spring training. It's that little boost that can get you as a baseball fan over the hump to spring training.
For sure. And, you know, speaking of that boost that gets you over the hump, you set me up perfectly for the other thing I wanted to talk to you about while I've got you here. Let's talk. I was mentioning today, Plain Dealer, you know, in their, you know, articles here today, the sports page, checking it out on Cleveland.com before the show, and they did a little breakdown on the Indians, and we're going to do tons of this, of course, when the winter really hits here in the next few weeks, but just looking at the payroll, I mean, really not a lot that you don't know about the top end of it. We understand the big contracts that are hit, but some interesting notes, and we brought this up last week, I think. Is it Dan and I don't know. I think it was Dan Wismar and I. We were having a conversation about the payroll, and I mentioned how the Indians had such a low number of players making over 7 figures. It was one of the lowest of all the teams in the league, and how many people were making near the league minimum. When you get past the top guys, like obviously the very, very top, you got Swisher. He's going to be $15 million next year. Bourne is $13.5 million next year. Those aren't going anywhere. Then you've got, you know, your mid-range, your core guys that all signed their contracts last year. Brantley's going to make $5 million. And think about that. That's amazing. He's going to earn $10 million less than Nick Swisher next year. But, you know, for an MVP season. But that's just the way it goes. But even at his highest, the option in 18 is $11 million for Brantley. So at no point in his career will Brantley ever be overpaid. Let's just put it that way, at least based on this contract that he signed. You got Gomes at $1 million. You know, Kipnis, there's where, you know, now all of a sudden with his money starting to go up every year, that's where you start to get worried about, is he going to bounce back? Because it's different expecting a bounce back from him at the early arbitration eligible year numbers, and then boom, he's at 4.2 next year, and in 2020 he's making $17 million. So Hannah, we know about him, but you get to, like, this one was interesting. Besides $900,000, the entire Indians pitching staff for next year earns the league minimum or is going to have an arbitration hearing this year. I mean, they have tied up, and that's really the saving grace that balances out a little bit of those terrible contracts at the top end. I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. In total guaranteed money for next year, $4 million. And then on top of that, you've got 7 people who are going to be eligible for arbitration. So those guys are going to go, estimates that those guys are going to each average about $2 million in arbitration. It's going to be about $14 million total, million already expected. So at that point, with the club's payroll, it's going to be around $73 million with the players that we just listed. That's everybody here that's going forward with the team next year, all the money that you owe with the core of the team. So that's going to leave what? You got to, you know, the Plain Dealer's estimating that if they go in with next year, which was 85, that was where they started the season, 83, 85, that gives you $8 to $12 million. And that's where I go right back to what I said before. If you just don't splurge, you don't have to go crazy. But you've got, okay, say $12 million there. If you're willing to stretch that payroll to $90 or even $95 million, you've now opened up $20, maybe $22 million that you can spend this year and still be under $100 million payroll. That right there is Victor Martinez and a veteran starting pitcher. I'm just saying, what do you think about that? But there is some room there where you can go just a little bit more and put yourself in a position to get exactly what you need.
Well, that sounds good. And this is the time where you have to stretch your budget a little bit more. It's not like we had 70 wins, and that's when you don't stretch your budget. You stay within budget. But when you have a team that went to the playoffs last year and came very close despite all the problems this year, that's when you add to your budget and you capitalize on that, especially considering how ridiculously cheap this pitching is. It's amazing. That's an incredible stat about the pitching staff, how little money they were all making. You know, that's probably not going to happen again. So I think that this is when you definitely look at what does this team need and on offense and what spots can they go in and who can fill those spots. And then you really make a solid effort to try to fill those spots. If you can get somebody, obviously Victor Martinez would be a dream from a baseball standpoint and from a PR standpoint. And just imagine how happy everybody would be at that Tri-Fest if Victor was on the team again.
You know, that's what I'm saying, man. Let's